Hey, welcome back to another episode of Dirty Dave's Garage. Today we're working on a 2013 Dodge Durango. We're going to be draining the oil, changing the oil filter, and we're also going to be changing the transmission fluid. I may do that in a separate video, but for the oil, this is the oil pan here. You're going to need a 1/2 inch socket to get that bolt out. We're going to pull that out in just a second. Transmission, you have to drop the pan to drain this one. There's no drain plug on it. Hopefully you can see it. Looks like we got about, it just looks like 6 bolts to me. Yeah, 6 bolts. We'll get that size for you in a minute. I got a new filter to put up in there and new transmission fluid. We got about 80,000 miles on this vehicle. It's time to give the transmission some love. So we're going to get the oil draining. No big deal. We're going to pull that plug out, drain it, and then we'll get the transmission going. All right, so we're about to pull the plug out, and you're going to notice it's pretty black. That's because, before all of my oil changes, I put in some seafoam in the crankcase and drive it for about 50,000 miles or 50 miles to 100 miles to clean the engine out. It does a great job. It loosens up all the carbon deposits around all your valves and lifters, and you just drain it out with the oil. And you put like 1/2 can of seafoam in the oil, and I just dump the other 1/2 in the gas tank to clean out the fuel injectors. Good habit to get into. My cars all run great, and I've been doing this forever. So once this drains out, we'll be back. All right, so we got the oil drain, put the plug back in. I had to bring the truck down because this is where it's going to get tricky to change the transmission fluid. If you notice, here's your dipstick, got the yellow handle for your oil. This is one of those cars that has those no service deal transmissions. Like you're never supposed to service it yourself. So there's no dipstick. So you won't know once you drain your transmission fluid how much to put back in. So what we're going to attempt to do, we're going to pull the oil dipstick out, clean it off. We're going to take some pliers and pop this cap off, and we're going to stick the oil dipstick down into the transmission, and hopefully it goes far enough that it can show us where the transmission fluid's coming on the dipstick, and we'll mark it either with by taking a file and just putting a little notch in the side of the oil dipstick so we can always use that to check our transmission fluid. So I'm going to pull this cap off, we'll pull the dipstick, and if I can, I'll rig the camera up so you can watch. So hang tight. Okay, so my trick for the transmission fluid isn't going to work because the oil dipstick's not long enough to get down there. So we're going to have to get creative. But while I got the car down off the lift, I'm going to go ahead and put the oil in. I've pulled the cap off here. Make sure you've ordered the SC 520. It's right on the filler cap. Pulled it right out here on the side of the engine here. I always use synthetic. I'll put a link down in the description for everything I talk about, the seafoam, the oil, the transmission filter kit I use, the transmission fluid I'm using. My oil filter, the oil filter goes under this compartment here. And you have to take this metal cap off. It uses it's either 7/8 or 1-inch socket. It's not on real tight, it's just a metal cap. And there's a cartridge type filter that goes under it. I ordered mine off Amazon Prime, but Amazon Prime isn't what it used to be. They don't ship everything in 2 days anymore, and it hasn't shown up. It's supposed to come today. So if it comes today, I'll show, putting that in and replacing it. It's not rocket science though, guys. I mean, if you've made it this far, popping that filter in is not going to be tough. But we can go ahead and put the new oil in. Fortunately, these filters sit up. No oil is going to come out when we pop it out. So we can put our fresh oil in. So I'm going to go ahead and, this car usually takes just about 6 quarts. I'm going to go ahead and put 5 quarts in, empty the jug. I bought 1 extra quart, and we'll put that in when we're done everything, and we'll top it off once we get the car running again. I'm going to go ahead and lift the car up and start draining the transmission fluid, and we're going to try to capture what we drain so we can determine, and we'll pour it in an empty 5 quart jug so we know how much to put back in. That's what we're going to do since we couldn't use the dipstick trick. So we'll be right back. Okay, so here's the game plan for the transmission fluid, folks. You'll notice I took my oil drain system and I stuck another catch pan on top of it with one of those top hat funnels. I'll put a link to one of them in the description too, because if this is a messy job because there's no clean way to get the fluid out, what we're going to do, there's T30 Torx screws, if you can see them, there's 6 of them around the transmission pan. They're not on tight, they came pretty loose, so when you put it back, make sure you don't smash them in there real hard. They're not torqued down very tight. But we're going to loosen them all up. We're going to leave the ones in the back in. We're going to leave one up front in. We'll take the middle ones out. We'll take one of the front ones out. Then we'll start loosening the front one and try and pry it down so we can get the oil to start coming out. And you know what? It might be better to do it from the back because I'm worried when it starts coming out. If you noticed, now we're going to have to do it from the back. It's probably going to make a mess and splash all up in here, but nothing we can do about that. We're just going to have to do our best to get it on there, and if I can film it I will, but this is going to be tough. I don't have anybody helping me today with the camera, so I am going to stick it up here as best as I can, and we'll turn it on when we get to that point so you can see what happens. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I only took the 2 center bolts out and I started loosening up the back, and it already started coming out, so I loosened up the front some, so it's coming out, and it's coming out pretty good. Nice little shower of transmission fluid there. So I'm not going to pull those bolts out yet until a good bit of this comes out. So we may be here a few minutes. I'm going to let it drain until it looks like it's slowing down, then we'll go ahead and take those front bolts out and let it all come out the front. You're still going to have some in when you take those last couple bolts out of the, I keep saying front, I mean the back. This is the back of the car. We'll take those 2 front ones out last and hold the pan because there's still going to be fluid in it. Get the pan down, get this assembly out from under the car, and then dump what's left in the pan. And we'll take a look at the pan when I get done. See, there should be a magnet in it to catch any debris from your friction plates in your clutch packs in your automatic transmission. We'll spray that out with brake clean, get it nice and clean, put the new gasket on, and pop it back in place. So we'll be back shortly. Okay, so I went ahead and took the 2 back bolts out and drained off as much as I could. The 2 front ones are still in loosely, but it's just about got all out. It's going to get at that angle. So I'm going to push up on it, take those 2 bolts out of the back, and then lower the pan down into our top hat funnel and roll this assembly out of here so we can take a look at things. Actually, I might have to let it sit a while once I get the pan down so the old transmission filter that's up there has time to drip out. So we'll be back shortly. Alright, so we dropped the pan down. You can see the filter now. This is the filter up here that we're going to be taking off, but I wanted to take a minute to show you. When you take those Torx screws out, they have little brackets on them, and you can see they're kind of hooked. There's a little hook on it. That hook goes kind of inside, you'll see when you're pulling them off, and kind of clips under the pan and grabs it and pulls it up tight. So make sure when you put these back, you put them in the way you took them out so it grabs properly. And you can see on our old filter, or our old gasket, it's just a rubber square gasket. New one looks just like it, just fits around the edge. It looks like a really easy gasket to put on because it covers both sides. Don't need any Permatex or anything like that. You just slide it on and stick it back up in there. So we'll get a closer look at it in just a second once this is done dripping. But I'm going to go ahead and take a, let's see if, I think that filter just pops right off, so maybe I'll do that real quick. Probably have to jiggle it loose. I'm putting all my screws in this pan over here and my little clasps. This should just wiggle right off. There we we got some more fluid to come out. It all counts because we want to make sure we account for all the fluid we take out. And we're going to pour it in an old 5-quart oil jug and kind of get an idea how much we need to put back in. So that's going to drip for a bit, and then we'll be back to put our new gasket on and whatnot. So bear with me, we'll be back. Okay, so we pulled our oil pan out, our transmission pan out, and here's our magnet I was talking about, and there's a good bit of goop on there, so I'm glad we're changing this. So that's a lot more than I'd like to see, to be honest with you, but this magnet should pop out. If not, we're just gonna wipe it off real good with some paper towels, and we'll spray this out with brake cleaner before we put our new gasket on. We'll be right back. Alright, so we got our pan all cleaned out, sprayed it out with some brake cleaner, wiped it down with paper towels, just make sure there's no fuzz or anything. Cleaned our magnet off real good, put it back in, and we're going to get our gasket and pop it on. I'll just show you that here in a second. Alright, so we got our new gasket, our new filter. Got this one off Amazon. It's an ATP, part number B-217. I'll put a link in the description for it. Just going to take our new gasket, kind of figure out which way it goes. Looks like it goes like this, and it just slides right over the edge. Just push it on with your fingers. No RTV needed. Might be a little slippery from the residual oil, film oil that was on there. And we cleaned everything off, but make sure it's on there good. All the way around. It should stay on there now. That's it. It goes all the way around down both sides. One of the simplest gaskets I've seen. So I'm going to move the camera. I'll show you popping the filter on in just a second. Okay, so it looks like it's just about done dripping. I'm going to slide this out of the way some. Still dripping in the back there. So we got some goop up in there. I'm going to give that a shot. Brake clean. Don't want any of your holes plugged up in this thing. Alright, that looks good. And grab our filter. Now notice the new filter, I don't know if you can see it on the edge there, probably not, but it has a little rubber O-ring on it. So we're going to take a drip of this fluid and rub it around that O-ring. Just get it wet. Also, very important, check your old filter. Make sure the old O-ring came off with it. This one did. So you don't want to, if you stick one up there and your old one came off, you're asking for problems. You'll see the big hole it goes in. Might not be able to see it from the angle the camera's at. I'm just going to pop it up in there. And give it a wrap. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Now there's a little slot, looks like, for this little tab to go up in. I'm just trying to make sure I get lined up with it. Doesn't want to go. Let's take a look at the old one, make sure they're the same. It looks like it. So I'll make sure that's where it belongs. I'll pull the light down so I can get a, actually have a different light we can use. Just to be safe. There it is. Maybe not. Sure looks like that's where it goes. Yep. I'm gonna need 2 hands for this. Yeah, we got her. Okay. We got that done. This back. Catch those last few drips. Get ready to put a pan back on. Now I'm going to start with the 2 center connectors. And this back one, for some reason, is attached to a metal tab up here. So the back one did not come off, so don't worry about that. Get this up here, get it started. Where I can see. Come on. There we go. Just get it started with your fingers first. Make sure you're not cross-threading. Grab one for the other side here. Okay, so we got the 2 side ones in. I'm going to try to get this back one in. I need to move the light because this is the one that goes through this. There's like a connector there, and I want to make sure that it gets under the lip. I can't see with this light in my eyes, so we got to move it. There we go. Get her lined up. Come around the other side. Get this this front one up there. And again, make sure those little spacers with the hooked space, the slot, are grabbing the lip of the pan. Let me do this one left-handed. That it? We're missing one. Where is she? Right. Oh, I think I dropped one in the top hat funnel. I'm gonna roll this out of the way. Get it out of the way. Because we're gonna need to collect that fluid and see what we ended up with. There it is. I got it. Okay, everything's finger tight now. I'm going to grab my T30 socket and snug them all up. We'll start in the middle, do the two middle ones, then do them across just to be safe. I don't think you need to worry about too much of a cross pattern with that big gasket they give you. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I took and dumped our oil container. Oh, sorry about that. Dumped our oil container into an empty jug, and looks like we only got out about maybe 3 quarts, a little less than 3 quarts right here. So we're gonna put about a half a jug in, maybe a little more than half a jug, and go with that. Now you can order dipsticks for these transmissions. They make aftermarket ones. So I'm gonna get one. It'll probably take a few days to get it, but I'll put a link to that in the description as well, so we can make sure we're good with our tranny fluid. But I'm gonna get the car down. We're gonna start filling it up. Okay, so we got the Mopar ATF Plus 4 right off Amazon. It's a synthetic transmission fluid. I'll put a link in the description. This one I got off Amazon. We're going to be using a skinny filter or skinny funnel here to fit in that transmission tube we pulled the cap off of earlier. And it's going to take time because there's not much of an angle. It's, you know, you're going to have to take your time, just dump in a little bit at a time. Like I said, we're going to put about 3 quarts in, maybe a little bit less, until I get a dipstick to actually check it with. So I'll be back after I get that done. Okay, so we've got our transmission fluid in. Like I said, I put about a half a jug in until I get a dipstick I can check it with. Final, when you're done with all this, check it. Make sure all your caps are on. This kind of has a groove, a little slot. You'll see when you pull it out. Push it in and then it twists a little and locks in place. But you'll probably need pliers to twist it off and pull it out the first time. Make sure if you did your oil change, you got your oil cap on and it's on properly and tight. My stepson just took his brand new Subaru WRX to a Subaru performance shop, had it dyno tuned. While he was there, he told him to change the oil. They forgot to put the cap on. He takes off down the road, blows up his motor. Brand new WRX STI, high performance car. The shop he went to, thank God, was a reputable shop. They took full responsibility and they're putting a new engine in for him. But that's still not a fun thing to go through. So always, and not just your caps up top, make sure you tightened up your oil plug at the bottom and, you know, gave it a good wrench to keep it snug. You don't want to kill it, but get it on good and tight. And that should do it. Now, when you start the car after the transmission change, start the car, pull it out park, put it in reverse, let it sit for 5 seconds. Just count to 5. Drop it in neutral, count to 5. Drop it in drive, count to 5. Drop it down. If you got first or second gear, go through each gear and then go back up 5 seconds at each, stopping. And that makes sure, you get all the air out of your system and whatnot. But again, if you can order one of those dipsticks, it would be good to check. You don't want to overfill your transmission fluid, oil either for that matter, but transmission fluid especially. So that's it for now. Dirty Days Garage. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.